Hi, my name is Boris, and in today's video we're going to make a classic house drum pattern. We'll use some loops as well as one-shots to create a custom beat. The template you've just heard is called Touch, and it's part of our classic house production pack, which also includes the samples we're going to be using in this video. And we also have a completely free sample pack for you guys with royalty-free female vocals. Make sure to grab it because it's incredibly useful for making house tracks. Before we get into the video, if you like what we are doing on this channel, consider subscribing. We've got a lot more content about classic house coming up. And let's get started. Alright, so we're going to be constructing this drum loop over here. Let's open up another project and make this drum beat from scratch. We have our vintage house sample pack right here. So we have a bunch of loops here and we can choose the kick from loop number 8. As you can hear, it's very groovy. It's not a regular 4 to the floor pattern. There are some ghost kicks in between. So that's really cool. Let's drag that onto the kick track. And we can also drag it over to the sidechain track. I'm just going to color this clip black as well. And let's proceed onto the clap. So for the clap, we're also going to be using something from this loop here. Let's just drag over the claps loop and let's hear that together. By the way, we don't have any effects going on right now. Maybe we'll enable some of them at the end. And also we can drag over the perk loop from this loop and drop it over onto the third track. It already sounds really awesome, but we can spice it up with some other top loops and patterns. First of all, we need some hats. And for the closed hat, we're going to be using another loop, and it's going to be the sample. So this is a great way of working. You can just combine different loops to create original patterns. And let's preview that with all the rest. We are not stuck with loops, of course, we can use some one-shots. So for this purpose, let's make our grid smaller. I'm doing that with Command or Control and 1 or 2. Let's zoom in here and we can add an offbeat open hi-hat. For the open hat, we're going to be using some of the one-shot hats we have available here. Okay, so hat number 19, and we can drop it onto the offbeat position, and maybe let's repeat that 4 times, and we can consolidate this pattern by pressing Command or Control and Windows and J. And now we can get inside the clip, press loop, extend the clip over the entire pattern. So let's hear what that sounds like. And we actually can add some other offbeat hi-hats just to spice up and break up the rhythm in certain areas. So for this one, we're actually going to be using a sample labeled as percussion one-shot. And let's drag it over onto the next track. I'm making the grid smaller and let's change the pattern. Maybe we can zoom in here. We can do this and this. And maybe now if I turn off the grid, we can move these notes to give it a bit of swing. So let's hear what this sounds like now. Let's solo these hi-hats. So we've added a bit of groove here, so that's really great. Let's turn on the grid and maybe we can duplicate this pattern. Let's just add a one shot at the end as well as here. And let's play the clip from the beginning. Okay, so that sounds great. We can add some more percussion now in order to spice it up even more. And another percussion sample we're going to be using here is a synth sound. So we're going to be using this loop. Let's drag it over here, but we only are going to use certain areas of this loop. We don't need this entire sequence because that would be a bit too much. All we need is this little part. And we actually can split this, manipulate it a little bit. Maybe let's turn off the grid completely, chop it somewhere here, and we can add some fades. Make sure that the automations are disabled for you in order to add the fades. We can do something like this. And let's play that with the entire sequence. Let's enable the grid. Okay, so we've successfully manipulated these two chops and dragged them over a little bit in order to add a bit of groove here. We can actually consolidate this area just like we did with the open hats, treat that as a loop and drag it over until the end of the entire sequence. So now we can add just an offbeat snare in order to highlight the ends of bars. So let's hear the snares. Let's use snare number 5 here and drop it at the end of the first bar. So I'm putting the snare right here. I just made the grids a bit smaller, and we can also treat this as a loop. Consolidating, pressing loop and extending. So let's hear the entire sequence now.
Hi, this video is sponsored by us. If you like these tutorials and want to support the channel, check out our website packed with online courses and professional sound packs. If you want to cut years of your learning curve, check the PML Beginner to Advanced Music Production program for Ableton Live. You will know Ableton inside out and learn how to write, produce, mix and master complete tracks. You learn step by step at your own speed, from an empty file to professional production, as if we're sitting side by side in the studio. Thank you for listening, and now let's get back to your tutorial.
Okay, so we have the basics, and let's go over some of the effects we can apply here. So first of all, let's go into the kick, and we have an audio effect track with a bit of drum bass applied here. Which basically just beefs up our kick drum a little bit. We are cutting off some of the lows, but that's not necessary in this particular section. And we have a compressor and some EQ just to mix it better with the rest. We're actually boosting the sub a little bit here as well, and some of the mids. Let's move on to the clap. We're using the channel EQ here. As well as some glue compression that is in an audio effects rack, basically a dry and wet signal. As well as some auto filtering just to shave off some of the very high end. And this also has an LFO applied, which basically moves the filter for us so that the clap isn't always exactly the same. Okay, so moving on to the loop, we have some redux. And this is actually Redux from earlier versions of Live, but of course there's also Redux in Live 11. We have just with some downsampling going on here, self to downsampling, and this basically adds a bit of digital distortion here. We have some EQ, just cutting some of the lows, and then utility, just expanding the signal a bit onto the sides. Okay, so let's play these sounds together. And let's move on to the hats. We have some auto pan, basically moving the signal left and right in the stereo spectrum, some saturation, but it beefs up the hi-hats a little bit. Also some basic EQ, and also the auto filter just like on the clap with an LFO so that it's moving. As for the second hat here, we have an EQ. Just basically cutting some of the lows and some of the highs with the bell curve. Also an auto filter, which basically also moves with the LFO and some delay. which adds a quiet ghost note after each of the hats. I just exaggerated so you can hear what it sounds like. As for the next one, we have some redux as well. And that really changes up the sound into a perk rather than a tambourine hit. We have an amp. So that really changes up and distorts the sound, as well as some basic EQing. And as for the synth sound here, we're driving it and adding some EQ. But that's really basic. And as for the snare, we're just using some EQ at the end here. And if we take a look at the group of the tops, we're just using the glue compressor with the sidechain setting. We're using the sidechain kick track in order to give it the sidechain signal. So it's doing a little bit of pumping just to blend it better with the kick and add a bit of energy onto the loop. Okay, so let's hear the loop all together. Okay, so let's go back to the full project file. As you can see, there's a lot of variation here. The drums have some effects applied on the entire group just to beef it up even more and compress it. And let's play it with all the other instruments. That would be it for this video. Make sure to check out our Music Production Academy. We've got courses for both beginners and more advanced producers. Subscribe to our channel, click the notification bell. If you enjoyed this video, leave us a like and write us a comment, and I will see you in the next ones.
I wanna touch you.